Don't you think the silence, though, by the government on providing details is proof that they're terrified of telling the voter what this is really all about? I mean, where do you think this black sovereignty and Lydia Thorpe fit into all of this?
Well, there's an element of that within some Indigenous leadership groups. There's no question about that. And I don't think that represents anything like a majority view. I mean, it's in the single digits, in my judgment. But I must say and I haven't said this to anyone else yet, but going out to Leonora and these places where the damage to humans and the violence driven by grog is just prolific. It's a further ascent from the minds of those Indigenous
Just stop there for one moment. Just stop there for one moment, Peter. Just explain to our viewers what we're talking about here. This is the Prime Minister went to Kalgoorlie on Monday, and the towns, let me make this point, that you actually visited were towns that asked the Prime Minister, 400 kilometres from Kalgoorlie, to visit. And they can't make any contact with the Prime Minister or with the government on any of these things. Peter Dutton went there, and just explain what you heard from... These are Indigenous leaders, I mean, who made the point that the voice means nothing to them, or, you know, restoring the right to buy alcohol means nothing when you're actually losing a child as a result of a violent family.
Alan, it really was pretty confronting. And, you know, as a police officer, I went into some terrible scenes and houses and murders and all the rest of it. But when you're in the communities, it really strikes you that the abject squalor, the frustration that's felt by the community leaders, by the Shire presidents, the councillors, the parents in the community, because when the cashless debit card applied, they saw a reduction in the alcohol consumption and therefore a result of lesser violence, people buying more food, less grog, less drugs in the community, feeding their kids, not just spending their money on alcohol and drugs. And when we sat down in the round tables in these communities, the Prime Minister flew over to get to Kalgoorlie and to Perth for the high-price ticket occasion that he had in Perth, a big flash dinner, when we were having dinner at Leonora at the local pub there. They're angry and they're frankly at a wit's end, where they're saying, we just can't keep up with the level of violence. And the kids are the victims here, the women are the victims. And, you know, sitting in those groups, the Indigenous women are saying that they want the grog to stop. The local businessman who has the local store says, you know, if the government wants evidence, because the Prime Minister, you know, says, oh, well, there's no evidence that the cashless debit card works. And the way that it does work is that it requires people to spend money on food, not alcohol, so that their kids get fed. And the shop owner was saying he can track it almost to the day, where when the cashless debit card was enforced, people are buying fruit, they're buying veggies, they're buying meat, they're preparing meals, they're buying food for their kids. And almost immediately when the cashless debit card was abolished by Anthony Albanese, the grog sales go up and the food sales go down. The presentations of the kids at the soup kitchen goes up. So I don't know what more the Prime Minister needs to act, but he's not across the detail and he won't go and listen to these communities and listen firsthand. They're not talking about the voice. They want the violence to end, they want the grog to end, and they just want to get on with the normal life like every other Australian.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we get off this voice thing, I just say to my viewers, I think Peter Dutton made reference to this, but I should repeat it. It is indicative of the impending failure of this referendum, and it will fail, that Anthony Albanese is now saying, distancing himself from ownership of the voice, and he says, it's not my voice, it's not Labor's voice, it's the people's voice. I mean, give us a break on all of that.